Hi, and welcome everyone to Ethereal Encounters Unveiled. Today we are broadcasting live on the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 on the Gulf Coast and 107.7 FM in beautiful New Orleans. Hello, everyone. It's always such a joy to be here with you on this beautiful Friday. And I'm sure many of you are very excited about the upcoming weekend. So let's dig in. And as you just heard, welcome to Ethereal Encounters Unveiled. And of course, much thanks to the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, which you can find on 200 platforms across social media, as well as on FM radio at 105.3 on the Gulf Coast and 107.7 FM in New Orleans. So welcome everyone. Today, we're going to be tackling something that is like a lot of us face, but I don't think we talk about often enough, and that is burnout, but not just burnout. We're going to cover so much more in depth about it. It's that constant exhaustion, the mental fog, the stress that never seems to let up. It's like our energy is constantly being drained in a world that moves faster than we can keep up with. But what if there's a way to reset, restore, and reclaim your energy? And you can do that without adding more stuff to your to-do list. Today, our guest is Jessica Howard. She is a leading expert in energy healing and the author of a few books. Today, we're going to be focusing on energy healing for modern life. She's here to show us how modern energy practices can actually help us heal, find balance, and thrive even in the midst of all this crazy chaos. So we're going to dive deep into the Burnout Antidote, energy healing in a modern age. And you're about to discover tools, insights, and many other things that can change the way you feel every day. And since I'm kind of on a kick for doing a lot of self-love, self-help, healing, shadow work topic thing, I think that we need it. And I've been sensing that globally, many of us are indeed suffering from energy burnout and much more than that. It's a spiritual burnout as well. So with all that said, let's bring Jessica. Hi, Jessica.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Of course, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. So you're located in the UK, of course, and we love our UK guests.
Yes, it's kind of late evening here, but it's a good time, a good activity for a Friday evening.
Absolutely. So you're going to see me say hello to people as they pop in the chat. I always love to say hello to them as they come in. And of course, Heidi, our star sister, much love to you. Always. And we have Michelle from Milwaukee, Oregon. I didn't know that about you, Michelle, that you're from there. Always a joy to see you. And we have Kiara. I love your little Statue of Liberty icon there. That's really cool. Much love and much thanks for being here. And yes. Hello. And of course, Carrie, another beautiful star sister. We love seeing them. So always a blessing. So let's dig into about you. The statue is crying. Yes, I see that. Yeah, that's pretty fitting, especially right now. It's pretty fitting. Absolutely. It's a good one. Let's talk about you to get started. Like what brought you to this, to the writing of this book? And of course you have other books as well, but how did you get to where you're at today? Tell us about your background, who you are, what your passions are, and etc.
Okay. Yeah. So as you said, I live in the UK. I actually live in London, so the biggest city in the UK, and it's as you'd expect from big cities. It's busy, it's vibrant. But yeah, there's a lot of energy going on there. But I suppose this all started for me, and I'm sure like many people who are interested in spirituality, it started very young. I was quite a sensitive child. I could sense energy, I could see spirits and things. And it was probably when I was about 12 or 13 that I first discovered witchcraft, just from a magazine article, those kind of teenage girl magazines, somebody had written an article on witchcraft. And that kind of made me realize that there was a name for the sorts of things that I believed and the sorts of things that I felt. And so I started researching witchcraft. And that led me down quite early on to chakras. So I spent a long time kind of, working with the chakras. And then it just kind of evolved from there throughout the years. I remember kind of the point that I decided, okay, I want to deliberately look into energy healing. And what was interesting was that I sort of realized that I've been practicing energy healing without realizing it. And I think that's probably true for quite a lot of people, actually. So I went on and, I did my Reiki levels 1, 2, and master. And I started looking into the auras and EFT tapping. And it got to the stage where because there's a lot of information out there. There's so much information out there, but it can be really difficult to know where to start. And there's lots of books on chakras, there's lots of books on auras, there's lots of books on crystal healing. But I struggled to find kind of a book that just covered everything. So for the pure beginner who might not know where to start. So I
Mm.
decided that I wanted to write something that just kind of gave an overview of all of the main energy healing practices and put that all in one place essentially. And I've always been really interested as to how we can take these kind of cultures, traditions, and practices and adapt them for modern day living, but without losing any of their sacredness or their effectiveness. So
Yeah.
that's where the kind of the modern angle comes in. So for me, it's very much been I suppose, an evolution of my spiritual journey. But yeah, it is really fascinating when I kind of look back on everything that's happened to me throughout my life and how much of that has been influenced by energy healing and just kind of having that understanding of energy and the way it shaped my mindset and things. So yeah, it's definitely been a very, very interesting journey.
Wonderful. Yeah, I loved your book. I mean, I have the PDF copy, but if you have the paper copy, hold it up so folks can see it. It was really well written, well thought out. And I love the progression of each chapter into the next. Like, it really clarified a lot too, especially about energy. So let's start with, for folks that don't know, maybe, um, how do you tap into your energy? Is it something we do naturally? Do we need to practice doing this? Like, just give us a 360 overview.
So it's something that everybody has access to. Quite often we've switched it off. So we tend to go through the world, we live in a very kind of science-based world which is driven by logic. So everything that we do, we focus on what we sense through our five senses, what we can touch, what we can smell, what we can see. Everything that we do kind of has that element of needing to be absolutely verifiable and yeah, just kind of physical. And life is very quick as well. We move so quickly through life
Mm.
that we very rarely have time to just kind of sit with ourselves. And I think that is one of the biggest barriers to energy and why people find it difficult to connect with energy, or they think that energy is this like big spiritual thing that you need to meditate on top of a mountain for 100 days before you can get in touch with your energetic self. And it's completely the opposite. Energy is, it's all around us, it's inside us. science has proven that everything is made of energy, and that includes us. And this energy radiates throughout our body, it radiates outside of our body. We are constantly connecting with this energy every single second of every single day. But it's really difficult to feel it because, we're just kind of so busy that we just don't stop to listen to it. So honestly, the best way to just kind of get started is just to take a couple of moments and just sit with yourself. One of the exercises that I like to perform is a breathing exercise, and it's really, really simple. And that is to simply just focus on your breathing. And as you inhale, make sure that you inhale through your nose and just follow the breath down as it goes, so through your nose, and actually kind of follow it down through your throat, and make a point of breathing into your stomach. A lot of us actually breathe incorrectly. James Nestor has done a really fascinating book on the science of breath. It was released in 2020. He says that I think it's 80% of us breathe wrong. A lot of
Oh,
people tend to take kind of short, shallow breaths into the chest, whereas actually we want to be breathing into the stomach. The In Reiki, we have something which is known as the tanden. So that is an area in your body where it's believed that your energy is stored, and this acts like a battery. So obviously, when your battery's full, this energy can flow around your body, and everything's very kind of free
mm,
and balanced. But when the tanden is empty, then yeah, that's when we start to feel kind of sluggish and slow, when we get that mind fog. So breathing into the tanden really helps energize it, because energy is breath. Energy is one of the pure breath, sorry, is one of the purest forms of energy. So simply just breathe in and follow that breath again, kind of through your nose, down your throat, and see it going into your belly area, which is where the tanden is. And then as you exhale, just kind of feel that energy flowing throughout your body, kind of expanding and spreading throughout your body. And as you do this a few times, you really start to kind of feel and get an idea as to how that energy moves within you and sits within you, and kind of, yeah, you really begin to sense it.
mm.
And I think that's the most important thing, is just taking that time out, just taking a few seconds to sit with yourself and just try and connect.
Yeah. Yeah, because like I used to think when I first took meditation class, TM, transcendental, I thought, oh my gosh, you have to do this 2, 3 times a day for 20 minutes to an hour. And I discovered over the course of time that you can actually do that, sit with your breath for like 20 seconds even, and greatly benefit from that as well. Is that what you've found too, Jessica?
Oh, absolutely. I've always said that, especially with practices like this, 2 minutes a day is much more beneficial than an hour-long session once a week, for example,
Right.
because, yeah, you feel the benefits when you're actively integrating it into your everyday life. So 100%, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And then there's so much that taps into our energy and sucks the energy, the life force out of us, or the loosh, as it's called, like especially in when referring to like the demonic, that they like to tap into our loosh, our energy. And I believe that fully, that there's a lot of entities out there in spirit and human form. And you talk about vampire energies in your book, which I loved, because that is gospel truth. I mean, there are so many vampires out there, human, metaphorically speaking, they just kind of suck the life out of you. How do we deal? Because that's all a big part of burnout too. You can deal with a toxic person, feel great before, and then after that, just feel absolutely drained of all your mental and physical resources. So, like, let's talk about that a little bit, because I think a lot of people are struggling dealing with that. What's your advice for these vampire energies?
Yeah, 100, absolutely. And I mean, some people are not even aware that they're doing it. You know, a lot of people aren't aware that they are taking other people's energies, but some people do it deliberately. There's whole books and groups dedicated to energy vampirism. You know, they state how they do it in an ethical way, but I do question whether anything like that can ever really be ethical. But that's by the by. But yes, it does happen, and it happens a lot more than we think, especially, you know, in my instance, as I said, I live in London. I'm constantly surrounded by people, and because our energy radiates out kind of
Oh,
like a force field around our body, or the aura, we are constantly
yes.
interacting with other people's energy. So they don't even have to
Yeah.
be draining your energy for their energy to have an impact and effect
Yes.
on your energy. So for me personally, and spiritual protection is extremely important. You know, the saying that
Mm,
prevention is better than cure. So there's loads of different ways that you can protect your energy. And I do recommend that, you know, anybody who is sensitive to energies, or even if you're not, because you could be sensitive and just not realize it because, you know, you haven't been exposed to this before. But I recommend that anybody who, yeah, wants to work with energy healing, or is just generally in environments where they're busy or you're surrounded by
yeah.
toxic people, to practice some form of spiritual protection. So my personal favorites are the energy shield, which is a really, really popular exercise. It's been around for years. I've been taught it as part of my witchcraft studies, as part of my Reiki study. So, you know, it's a very popular visualization. And all we're doing when we create the protective shield is we're drawing energy to ourselves and then using that to form a shield around us, which effectively stops negative energy from coming in. And to do this, again, very simple. You can rely on your breath, or you can use meditation. So there's a very popular meditation called the Roots meditation. And again, it's one that's been around for years. I've seen it in many different books and been taught it
Mm,
in many different ways. But
yeah.
essentially, you visualize roots coming out from the bottom of your feet or your root chakra and anchoring you into the ground. And then you can use this to draw energy kind of up through your roots and into your body. And then you can use that to kind of focus on pushing that energy outside of your body and creating a shield around you. Again, you can use your breath. So inhale this energy in, and then on the exhale, kind of focus on breathing your shield. And you want to keep your intent in mind, because intent is always really important in energy healing. And you want
Mm,
to make sure that the negative energies are kept out, but the positive energies are still allowed to come in.
yeah.
So energy shielding is a really, really great and popular method. If you're not particularly skilled with visualization, or you just don't really get on with visualization, then there are certain crystals that can offer protection, usually darker colored crystals like obsidian or hematite. There are kind of talismans and signs and symbols that represent protection. The So the hagstone, for example, which is just a stone with a natural hole through it, that's often used for protection. So you could wear that on a chain around your neck. I personally have a little mirror necklace, because mirrors are great for protection, as they reflect negative energies or
Yeah.
deflect negative energies. So I just wear that as a necklace. So, and you know, there's certain scents as well, and smells that are associated with protection, such as sage or frankincense. You know, you could wear these in perfume form, or just dab a bit of essential oil on your wrist before you go out. So essentially, there's loads of different ways that you can practice protection. And definitely ensure that you are, when you're in those difficult situations, you're again just doing that, checking in with yourself and saying, okay, how am I feeling about this? Do I need to leave the situation? Do I maybe need to just quickly build myself an energy shield? And make sure that you're being proactive. But I would personally say that one of the biggest ways that we can protect our energy
Mm,
is by shifting into a mindset of gratitude, and
yeah.
just kind of, you know, looking for those positive energies, because, you know, we all know that when we feel happy, things feel much more manageable. And so cultivating a mindset that comes from a place of gratitude and compassion can just kind of help us not just spiritually but like mentally fight off those negative energies, if that makes sense.
God, I love all that. Everything you said. I like the roots meditation too, imagining that your feet are, planted on the ground and you're rooting yourself like to the earth, and then building this wall of protection around you. Someone once told me, not recently, not to visualize the color white, but rather choose like a light blue or something, because I don't know how true it is, but it made a little bit of sense. She said that when negative forces are out there, they're attracted to the white light. So it's best not to make yourself like a red flag, and to use like a softer color that's not going to like stand out as much. Is that true? Do you find that true, Jessica?
I mean, I don't know if that's true or not, but I mean, I personally use blue anyway. So it's interesting that
Yeah,
you mentioned that, because I've always just been kind of drawn to the color blue when I've built my
yeah,
shield rather
true.
than white.
Yes.
Yeah, which is interesting. But I mean, it does make sense, because the more the more in touch with energy that you become, then the more you kind of, and it's difficult to know whether it's because you've suddenly become a beacon or whether you're just more in tune with it, so you're noticing these things more. But
Yeah,
it does make sense that, you know, if there are entities that are looking to feed off of your energy, they're going to hone in on the people that have
yes.
um the best energy, or you know, the healthiest energy. So that's a really interesting point. Yeah, as I said, I personally usually use the color blue anyway. Another one that I quite like is visualizing it, my shield as, you know, kind of with oil and gasoline, it has like that rainbow shimmer.
Yes.
Yeah, I quite often use that in my shield as well,
Oh,
and
I
just kind of
love
visualize any negative energy sort of being kind of consumed by the shield and transformed
that.
into positive energies with this shimmery rainbow.
Yeah. Oh, I like that a lot. Yeah. It's funny. It's not that like it's all I think about, but I think about these negative entities during the course of my day, because as an empath, that was one of the things that I immediately was able to pick up on, especially when I met someone and talk. I mean, even on video, I'm able to be perceptive to that. So I'm always like, not always on guard or paranoid, but like my guard's up, when it comes to that. So I often do that just naturally, like for decades, even before people talked about these types of subjects, because it felt very good to be able to ground yourself and protect yourself in that way. Like, even did you notice when you go in a large store, and I've mentioned this before, like Walmart, I don't know if you guys have Walmarts out there in the UK, but a big store. And you immediately begin to feel this like oppression, like an oppressed feeling. And that's just everybody's energy bouncing all over the place. And, a lot of people don't pay attention to that, but those that do, I think grounding yourself and doing this type of work is an absolute must, right?
Definitely, and it's not just people as well, but places hold energy as well. Like I'm sure you've had it as well, but you've walked into a particular place and that place can be empty, but you know, you just suddenly get that, you know,
Oh,
that foreboding, you kind of feel that heavy energy. And you know, I feel that a lot in especially kind of historical places, or museums and things like that, that yeah,
yeah.
even kind of the energy of a place as well as people can have that impact on you. But
Oh,
yeah, I
yeah.
remember shielding was one of those things that I think I remember kind of being a kid and sitting in my bedroom, like on the floor, and kind of practicing shielding without even really understanding what it was or knowing it just kind of felt like an intuitive thing at
Yes.
the time to kind of, you know, protect me from, you know, things that were going on at school and things. So yeah, I think for a lot of people, you know, going back to what we were discussing earlier, we all have that ability, and it's there within us. We just need to kind of quieten down and listen and trust it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Carrie made a comment that I just want to get your take on. She said, no, there are literal vampires. She's found them and she witnessed one come up at her a couple of weeks ago. Now, I've heard that there are practicing vamps. Now, whether or not they are actual vamps, I've never witnessed one. She said she did. What's your experience with that? Do you think these entities are really out there?
I do. I think it's the question is kind of which form do they take, and
Mm,
I suppose kind of what's, what is it that they want? Because especially if we're thinking energy protection, you kind of, you need to know your enemy, essentially. You need to
yes.
know exactly what it is
You
that they're coming
do.
at you with. Shields and things are great for general protection, but you know, and even from an energetic sense, you can be the recipient of curses and directed attacks. I've been on the receiving end of myself. It's not fun. And I've always kind of found that, yes, being able to really kind of understand the motivations of
Mm,
what you're up against can really help you decide what the best course of approach is. Yeah, in terms of vampires and entities like that, yeah, I absolutely do believe that they exist. I believe that they exist in many different forms. And there's so many ways that people and entities can take your energy, and it may not even be through a deliberate kind of spiritual attack. It could be through trying, I often get it, and I'm sure a lot of people do, especially if you're on Instagram and Facebook. But the people that will comment or send you messages saying, "Oh, hey, I came across your profile. I was really drawn to it. I can tell that you've got a generational curse on you. Do you want to pay me to do a reading? And I'll tell you how to get rid of that generational curse." It's they're looking to take your time, they're looking to take your money, they're looking to take your attention,
yeah,
and all of this steals your energy kind of as a byproduct of that.
it does. Yeah, oh
So
gosh, so
yeah,
true. That's a great
so
point, Jessica, and so true. And a lot of people get wrapped up in that too, which is sad. Like I mean, they even do it on the phone. Like you get banks calling you and all these people trying to suck I had one this morning at 9 o'clock from a bank calling me and, trying to suck the life force out of you over the phone too. Yeah, that's why, like you said, know your enemy. That should be a tattoo somewhere. Like it really, really should. It's really, really, really true. Gosh, gosh, gosh. So in your book, you cover so much. Obviously, that's just one of them. I love how you went into the EFT tapping. Yesterday, one of our guests gave us a lesson in that. And I absolutely think, like, for me, it worked instantly. How do you use the tapping to heal yourself, to protect yourself? Do you do it daily? Tell us about that.
to be honest, tapping is not kind of my preferred method, and I think this is interesting as well because tapping is really, really beneficial, and lots of people swear by it. But for me personally, I prefer Reiki, and working with the chakras and crystal healing. But EFT tapping, I personally use that in almost kind of situations where I need immediate relief
Yeah.
or healing or
Yeah.
protection, because it is something you can do quite subtly. I mean, you can sit there in a meeting which is stressing you out and just kind of, tap or massage your temples, and it
Yeah.
just looks like that you're just putting your head in your hands. So in terms
Right.
of energy healing methods like EFT tapping, is great because you can be very subtle about it, and it can be really targeted as well. Like, if as long as you kind of have an understanding of what the issue is, then you know the particular points that you need to target. I quite like coming up with, kind of my own little scripts with EFT. So, okay, in this instance, I've got this routine, and in that instance, I've got that routine. And that's one of the things that I generally like about energy healing as well, is that it can be quite creative, and you can really perform practices that resonate with you and are personal with you for you. So yeah, I think I first encountered EFT tapping at a festival. Actually, I went to a Buddhist festival probably about 15 years ago now, and they were doing a workshop on it, and I'd never heard of it before, and went along to the workshop, and yeah, it was absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, it is.
um and it's great to see that it's risen in popularity. But yeah, for
Mhm.
me, if I'm looking for something, I suppose what I'd call kind of a deeper healing, for lack of a better word, or kind of more continuous healing, I tend to turn to something like Reiki. But I find that EFT is great for me personally when I'm in those situations where I need something immediate, because yeah, it's effective, it's subtle, and yeah, it is great to see it growing in popularity.
Good, good. Yeah. I liked it. She had us do like one that started like in the face and kind of worked its way down. It took like a minute or so to do. I couldn't see myself doing that every day, but when I'm feeling really high levels of stress, like it really calmed me down. And I liked that. Like it worked right away.
Yeah, yeah. And another practice that I'm quite interested in is qigong. So it's basically like a moving meditation, but that will often focus on the meridians as well. So EFT tapping uses kind of the notion of meridians, which is from kind of ancient Chinese tradition. And that
Mhm.
idea is that you have all of these, hundreds of energy centers kind of throughout your body. So very similar to the chakras, just kind of a slightly different format. And so, EFT tapping
Yes.
works in kind of activating those essentially. And Qigong is very, very similar. It's kind of almost like Tai Chi in the sense of it being a
Yeah.
moving meditation. But yeah, we do a lot of kind of, tapping of the head and kind of, tapping just kind of around the body to activate those. And that's something that can be quite useful in the mornings, kind of as you're stretching. I mean, I'm definitely at that age now where I need to stretch before I start the day. So yeah, even just incorporating kind of a minute of just, some quick tapping around those key points in the mornings can be really, really beneficial.
Yeah, Qigong is really growing too in popularity. My daughter's best friend actually goes to China to get her certification for
Oh,
directly.
wow.
Yeah, she just came back from a trip there actually. And I think she's been there 2 or 3 times already. So she's really big. I guess that's the best place to learn how to do that if you're going to go for it, right?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, you can't beat kind of, yeah, learning from people who are immersed in that culture. Because I think that's one thing that we kind of miss as well. And I know that, there's been loads of conversations in recent years about appropriation versus appreciation. And I do feel that, especially in the current environment that we live in, it's really easy for people to just, watch a YouTube video, or just, look at a website that, is impossible to verify, and get this information, and, suddenly think that, okay, well, I've mastered this, what's next? But actually, there's so much more to these practices, and energy healing again is a great example. Things like Reiki, it isn't just a one and done, treatment's
Right.
done, okay, I'll wait and have another one in a month's time. But they can be really deep spiritual practices.
Oh,
So
yeah.
yeah, especially things like qigong, like, yeah, if you've got the chance to learn it from someone who is immersed in that
Oh,
culture,
yeah.
you're going to get so much more
Yeah,
from
yeah.
it than just watching a YouTube video.
Absolutely. Well, it's like people that want the ayahuasca experience, they go to the shaman, to do, they're not going to go to the guy around the corner.
Yeah.
They want the authority. It's so interesting. Back when my kids were little, I remember so clearly, and remember, none of this stuff was spoken about in the open. Like it wasn't. They thought you were crazy if you talked about witchcraft or any energy work, stuff like that. So everything I've ever done has always been, behind closed doors. Except my husband, God rest his soul, he knew, and he was totally okay with anything I decided to do. But I remember when my kids were little, I innately knew that by rubbing my hands together, I would create this like energy force that I felt like you can actually feel it if you put your palms to, you could feel your own energy. And when they had a tummy ache, I would just automatically do that over their stomachs. So when I realized that, like, nobody taught me that, that was, like you said before, it's an innate ability that we all have. And some of us are willing to step into that and do it. Like my kids now, adults as they are, they will say to me, "Mommy, my back hurts. Can you do some energy work on my," and they appreciate it still. Like it's a thing.
Yeah, yeah. And that's, I mean, yeah, that's really interesting. Like, yeah, really lovely as well. And that's kind of what it should be about. And that's one of the things I love about energy healing as well, is because it creates human connection. It's not just, you know, it's not just going to the doctors and they give you some pills and you take your pills and like that's it. There's that human connection and that emotion behind it. And it's, yeah, it's just, it's more of what we need in the world, right? That compassionate kind of human connection.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. Mr. Miyagi did this in Karate Kid to Danielson. That's right. That's right. That was such a good movie too.
Yeah,
Now, I wanted
the
to tap,
original. Yeah,
yeah, the original, not the one, not the sequels.
we don't talk.
I wanted to tap into aura. You have a like two chapters, I think, that kind of cover that. Why do we see auras? And then you have an aura programming exercise, which I love because, again, that was something that I was able to see just, at 15. In my teens, I started noticing that in people, and nobody knew what that was. Nobody talked about it, but yet it was there. So, can you talk to us about the aura and maybe how folks can work on that so they can enhance their abilities to see them more readily?
Yeah, so the aura is, and I suppose there's a few different schools of thought on exactly how the aura works. So essentially, as we mentioned at the beginning, that your energy, it's not just stored within your body, but it also kind of radiates out from your body, a bit like a force field. That force field is essentially your aura. So those people who work with the chakras, like myself personally, they see that, you know, the chakras are also connected to the aura, and you'll have a layer that represents your root chakra, a layer that represents your crown chakra, a layer that represents, you know, the rest of the seven main chakras essentially. Or, you know, there's some people that don't believe in chakras and they just kind of see the aura as a kind of, you know, this force field of energy that can change color based on your mood or how you're feeling. You can potentially see negativity in the aura, and again, that can look very different for a
Yeah.
lot of people. You know, it may look like darker colors, or some people might even see kind of rips and tears in the aura.
Ooh,
um,
yeah.
so auras are again kind of one of those things that, and I think it's really important as well to note that everybody experiences energy differently, which does
Yeah.
make it really difficult when you're trying to teach people about energy healing, because I can't tell you how you personally will experience energy. I can tell you how I experience
Wow.
energy, but I can't tell you how you personally will. But yeah, going back to the question, so the aura is essentially kind of your energy extended outside of your body. And yes, once you can view the aura, whether that's your own aura or someone else's, it can give you real insight into your own energetic health. So
Mm,
again, as I said, you know, you may see different colors or shades, which can give you an insight as to how someone or yourself is feeling. If there's any areas that need working on, you may see, you know, dark spots of negative energy. You may see rips or tears, and all of this just kind of helps to build a blueprint of your energetic state. And seeing auras is actually quite easy. It takes a bit of practice. Some people can see them with their physical eyes. A lot of people tend to see them in their mind's eye or their third eye. And I think that's quite important as well, because a lot of the time when we talk about, seeing things, like when we're seeing auras or we're seeing energy, a lot of
Right.
people get put off because they assume that means they must see it with their physical eyes, and then they can't, and they think it's too difficult. But no, a lot of this, we see it in our mind's eye. But auras, yeah, some people's auras I can see with my physical eyes. Some people's auras, it tends to be more of a kind of, my mind's eye sort of view. But essentially, a great way to start is to sit in front of or sit with a white wall behind you. And a mirror in front of you, preferably kind of a mirror big enough that you can see at least kind of the top half of your body. And then all you've really got to do is just kind of clear your mind and let your eyes go quite heavy. So,
Mhm.
when you stare at something for a bit too long and you zone out and your eyes start to get a little bit fuzzy, just kind of let that happen and just stare at your reflection, and kind of specifically the outline.
Mhm.
I personally find that the head is a great place to start. There seems to
Yeah.
be kind of a bigger concentration of energy around the
Yeah.
head for me when it comes to auras, and just kind of see what crops up. And again, it may be that you see physical colors or physical cuts, tears, something. Again, completely dependent on how you experience energy. You may see that in your mind's eye, but it can also manifest in things such as words popping into your head. So, maybe the word sad pops into your head, or the word happy, or perhaps you hear specific sounds, or you suddenly like smell a specific scent that could kind of mean something to you. So everybody experiences energy differently, but with auras, we do tend to experience it as color. So you are looking for different colors, and those colors and the shade of that color will help you understand kind of where you're at the minute and any areas that may need work. But yeah, auras are, I love auras. Again, I started working with auras quite young, kind of in my teenage years, and it just, yeah, and it doesn't just help yourself, but it's quite nice to be able to just kind of instantly clock how someone's feeling, like, your friends, your parents, etc., because a lot of people struggle to talk about the issues that they have. And so just kind of having that extra level of awareness and being able to see when someone might need a bit of support or a bit of compassion without them needing to tell you, it's just a nice thing to be able to do.
Yes, it really is. It's kind of like a perk of the spiritual world. That's how I
Yeah.
look at it. It's like a little added benefit. But Michelle mentions here that she can see negative auras. And you mentioned that you might see tears or blotchy coloring, maybe. Michelle, if you could put in the comment what you see, I would be interested to hear, because she also said that she has always been able to read and see energy, and that's all they are, right? It's just our energy field, essentially,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Yeah. If you can sense energy, then yeah, you're definitely going to be able to sense that energy. And yeah, it is surprising the number of people that kind of see this from a young age, and either just ignore it because they think it's just their imagination, or, as we kind of said, people are going to think that they're crazy, or, they just kind of shrug their shoulders and don't really think anything of it and don't bother to
Yeah,
look any further than that. But
which is
yeah, it
sad.
is interesting the number of people.
Oh, it really is. And especially now that we're experiencing this global awakening, that's all we hear about is this global awakening, which I think is wonderful. And I think a lot more people are tapping into that, the whole high strangeness world. And I think that it's happening out of need. It's like humanity needs this so badly, because there's, dark and light. That's what the universe consists of, right? And it doesn't always mean that the darkness is bad and the light's always good. There's a balance of both, right? So, do you tap in now as a witch, or I'm hopping all over the place, but what's the difference between I have so many questions I want to ask you. What's the difference between like paganism and witchcraft? And to you, like, is there a difference?
Yeah, for me, there's a difference. So I suppose kind of in the technical term, I see paganism as like the umbrella term, and underneath that you can have witchcraft or Wicca or heathenism, or the Alexandrian traditions. And so yeah, for me, paganism is kind of the umbrella term for
Yeah.
I suppose esoteric religions. For me personally, witchcraft is a nature-based religion.
Mhm.
So I work very closely with nature, and that kind of fuels a lot of my spiritual beliefs. But I do tend to try and keep energy healing separate, because I think they are two completely different things. And I think as well that a lot of people would probably be put off
Yes,
by
they
energy
would.
healing if they thought it was a witchcraft practice. I mean, and that one of the things that I love about energy healing is that it is so accessible. I know a Christian woman that practices Reiki, and it's open to absolutely everybody. You don't need to believe in God or a goddess. You don't need to follow a particular faith, or celebrate any particular holidays. So yeah, for me personally, even though I've been a pagan for years and years, I do keep that quite separate from my energy healing.
Yeah. And it's almost sad because it's like witches and pagans are still being persecuted because like I remember my kids probably were toddlers and I had joined a group of pagans and of course nobody knew except my husband. And when I lived in the city, I had neighbors very close to me and I had one on top. Well, I had a basement area where we used to go, a group of us, and they would play music and we would light incense and do energy work and healing things. And do you know she called the police, the neighbor?
Seriously.
I'm serious. Yeah. So ever since then, I've just had, such a deep sense of sorrow for anybody that practices because they are still being persecuted in a way or looked at or and people just don't understand. They get a bad rap, I think. And so I agree with what you're saying about separating energy work from that. I totally can agree and see why you do that.
Yeah, and it does. I mean, for me personally, they're very, very intertwined. It's
Right.
yeah, energy healing and witchcraft for me kind of go hand in hand. But yeah, it
Absolutely.
is it is a shame. And I think I'm quite lucky in a sense, being in London. It is such a diverse
Oh yeah.
city that, kind of welcomes like a lot of people. I mean, what was it last summer? I went and volunteered at a river cleanup, and then they had a voodoo priestess who came along, and like we did this big ritual um to ask for kind of blessings of their gods and goddesses upon the river, and made this huge offering, and all out in public, and no one batted an eyelid. And it was really lovely to be able to do that kind of in public without
Sure.
feeling shame or persecution. So things are definitely getting better, and I think I'm personally
Good.
quite lucky, given where I live, that I can be a bit more open about it. But on the
Good.
whole, I am quite secretive, isn't the right word, but there's also that, yeah, why invite negative energy in? Why give people the opportunity?
Exactly. I agree with you totally. In your book, you frame burnout, which so many of us are experiencing on the daily, as more of a and like an exhaustion. So, do you think that it's not only a physical exhaustion, but like a spiritual one too? And if so, do you think that that's amplified since the pandemic? Like, haven't you seen an increase? Like, what's your take on that?
Yeah, that is it's a really interesting question, and kind of one that just has so many different layers to it, and that you could really kind of deep dive into that. I think burnout on a spiritual level is definitely definitely increasing. And I think one thing to note as well is that, that notion of everything being linked. So theosophy has that notion of the different bodies, and it's become quite popular, but you have your physical body, your mental body, and your emotional body.
Right.
And for me, your energetic body is kind of an extra body there. And we see how all of these kind of states of being are intrinsically linked. So think about when you have a cold. So you get the physical symptoms, you get the runny nose, you get the sore throat, but then you also have the mental symptoms. You have the foggy head and the inability to be able to focus. You get the emotional symptoms. I know that when I'm feeling ill, I'm just like, the smallest thing will set me off and make me cry, and I get quite emotional. And in the same way, our energetic body is kind of linked to all of our other states of being. So an issue with your energy can also impact you physically, for example. So
Mhm.
actually, I've been having kind of issues with my throat for the past couple of days, and I know that my throat chakra is blocked and I need to do a bit of work on that, but I can physically feel the impact that has on
Mm.
me. So it is really important as well to kind of acknowledge that all of these states of being are linked, and physical burnout will impact your energetic self, and energetic burnout will also kind of help fuel a burnout in your physical self, your mental self, etc. So I think, yeah, that kind of that energetic or spiritual burnout is really important to recognize as something that exists, and make sure that you're taking steps to try and avoid that, because you will notice the effects that it has on your physical body and your emotional body and your mental body. And I think that it's one of those things that we struggle to see, and we
Mhm.
struggle to know how to approach, because there's so much going on in the world. And I think COVID has had a huge impact, and there's, as we kind of touched upon, there's all these different areas of life that are kind of stealing your energy. I mean, it's been quite reported, and I know that there's a general sentiment that ever since COVID, we're people are becoming a bit more selfish and lacking kind of awareness, that you see lots more people using speakerphones on the tube carriages rather than headphones, and people just generally kind of cutting in line. And I think especially since COVID, and social media definitely hasn't helped, but there is more of a me attitude rather than an us attitude. And people, and those, it's those sorts of people and those interactions that are gonna steal your energy, and are going
That's
to kind of impact you on that spiritual level, and lead to burnout. Essentially, it's,
yeah.
yeah, it's one of those, there's so many different reasons for it, and there's so many kind of, yeah, different things that we could unpick from socio economic terms, and behavioral and psychological terms. But yeah, I do think it's got worse, and I think I don't see it getting better anytime soon, what with everything going on in the world. So as cliche as it sounds, I do think that it's it's more important now than ever to kind of have that awareness, and make sure that you are taking the steps to protect yourself and others as well. We I think one of my favorite questions to ask is, okay, well, as a healer, what do you do? Because being a healer, it's kind of a role of responsibility, and it's great to kind of use that to heal yourself, but you also have that kind of duty and care to look out for other people as well. So it's, yeah, not just kind of how can I protect myself, but what am I doing to be kind of the positivity in the world that can help someone else as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Gosh, you're right. There's so much to unpack there. I agree wholeheartedly that humanity has become very ego oriented, even more so than ever before. I've noticed a great many people have this hostility out of the gate. Like I was in the lottery store just last week, and there was this elderly woman, and she asked me to help her with the lottery machine. So, of course, I was like, of course, of course. And I went over to help her. And she was kind of in front of me. I was behind her. And I said to her, well, you have to, push this button. And then she turns around and she looks at me and goes, what the hell are you yelling in my ear for? She started yelling at me out of the gate. Like, I wasn't yelling, I was talking absolutely normal, but I knew that this was on her and not me. So I didn't take it personally at all. I just went, okay. And I walked away and I didn't let it affect me. But I knew that, see, and I think that's important too. You need to like leave it with them. It's not you when people react that way. It's always them. I mean, most of the time, unless you're being obnoxious, right? But, that's highly not likely. So, in an instant like that, where here you are trying to help someone and then they're snapping at you for some reason, like I instantly knew, and especially because of the work I do and the people I talk to, I knew instantly that this was a her problem. And I was able to just say, well, bless her soul. And I just bailed out of the situation. But this is where things like road rage comes from, because people are just, they just don't know how to let that go. And that's such a sad state that we're in. And you're right. It is getting more noticeable, I guess is the word. So, do you think, Jessica, that all we could do, aside from like just sending out positive energy to the globe, is just to work on you and focus on the you? Like, what could we do?
Yeah, it is again, absolutely fascinating topic, and it's really difficult as well because it is easy to feel like you can't make any difference and
Yeah.
that there's nothing you can do, and to feel quite kind of powerless in these situations. But that is kind of absolutely not the case, and there's a lot that you can do, and absolutely kind of focus on yourself first. I mean, especially kind of as a healer, you need to be kind of confident in yourself and healed in yourself before you can focus on other people. So you've definitely got to think about yourself first. Um, for me personally, I think the best ways to do that is, I suppose I'll start with something, and I think I mentioned this phrase early on, and it's that kind of cultivating that gratitude mindset, that mindset that comes from a place of gratitude and compassion. Because I totally understand it. Things like the road rage, and as I said, living in London, and London is a busy place, and whilst
Oh, yeah.
sometimes that's great, sometimes that's not so great. And especially when I first moved to London, I'd I'd get so frustrated if I was just trying to get from A to B and there were just tourists everywhere, stopping to take photos in the middle of the street. And it would make me so frustrated. And I
Yeah.
could kind of feel myself carrying that frustration. And then,
Sure.
I'd get to my destination and, I'd just be like this little kind of ball of negative energy because I'd be, so frustrated. But actually, once I started to kind of reframe how I saw these things and how I interacted with these things, really, really helped. So rather than, if I'm walking down the street and, I can't get past because there's somebody there taking a photo, rather than kind of let myself get frustrated by that, I'd kind of stop and just kind of say to me, okay, I'm feeling frustrated. Let's reframe this and actually start kind of, almost putting myself in their shoes and trying to think of it from a
Mm,
place of compassion. Like, maybe this is a family that only gets to see each other once a year. Maybe, they've
yeah.
saved up for 10 years to be able to afford this
Yeah.
holiday, and they just want to be able to take a photo to commemorate it. And actually, I should feel really lucky that I live in a city that so many people, make so much effort to come to. And the minute that I started reframing it like that, and again, coming from that place of compassion, I it just changed my entire mindset. And now when I'm walking down the street and I see people blocking up the pavement with taking photos and selfies and things, it's actually kind of makes me feel a bit warm and fuzzy inside rather than
Right.
frustrated.
That's
And I
beautiful.
think,
Yeah, that's
yeah, and I
beautiful.
think so much of it, and again, that road rage example is a perfect one, because we often think that it's just somebody driving like an ass, but actually maybe they're rushing to get to a hospital, or they've got someone sick at home, and you just don't know. So yeah, I think one of the best things that you can do, as well as all of the, I suppose, practical exercises such as your cleansing and your protection, is just really focus on yourself and cultivating that mindset that just automatically kind of helps you see the positivity in the world, and in turn kind of makes you want to be the positivity in the world as well.
I love that. It's so true. I remember when the phrase paying it forward came out, and it had to be, gosh, at least 8, 10 years ago. And there was this influx of everybody like going to Starbucks and paying for the person behind them and doing all these
Yeah,
great things. Like you'd go to the laundromat and somebody would leave like a card, like how you put credits on a laundromat card,
yeah,
they would like leave them notes for people. And that was just the most beautiful thing to see. And then all of a sudden it just faded away. And now,
yeah.
but then I saw there's an influx of YouTubers that are paying for groceries for like the elderly. So they're
Oh,
going into,
really?
yeah, they're going into grocery stores. And like when they go to pay, they're putting their debit card instead. And that is such a beautiful thing to see. I love that. I love that.
Absolutely. And I know that there's some people who, you know, they kind of do the whole, oh well, is it really generosity if they're just doing it for the camera? Like, if the
Yeah,
camera
well,
wasn't there, would they be
right,
doing it? But it's
right.
still a good deed. And to be honest, if people
Absolutely.
need a camera in their face to do something good, it's I'd much rather that than, them not do anything at all.
What it takes, right? If that's what it takes.
Exactly. Yeah.
We have a question for you from Foggy Notions podcast, and welcome. He said, welcome, Jessica. You bring, he or she, I'm sorry. It's the first time I'm seeing them in the chat. Welcome, Jessica. You bring 20 years of experience in witchcraft and energy healing as a Reiki master. What first drew you into these practices, and how has your path evolved from traditional wisdom? So that's a loaded question for you.
Yeah, so I mean, I was drawn to these practices as kind of a part of my spiritual journey in general. It definitely got to the stage where I felt that I was kind of confident and secure enough in my own practices that I wanted to give something back, and I wanted to be able to help others. I think that, a lot of people kind of have almost like a natural inclination. To be honest, I probably would have looked into becoming a nurse or a doctor if I wasn't so terrible at
Mm,
maths. But
yeah,
yeah, unfortunately, I'm absolutely awful at maths, so that was never going to happen. But I do think, some people just kind of naturally lean towards healing in the way that someone might
yeah,
naturally lean towards divination and tarot, or working with spirits and things. So for
yeah.
me personally, it was just kind of that inner calling, without wanting to sound too cheesy about it. And yeah, it started off with the chakras quite early on, which then led on to the aura, and then I think from there I ended up looking kind of into EFT after I had the experience at the festival, and then after that into Reiki, and I think crystal healing came on quite early as well, because I mean, especially when I first started out, this was pre-internet. There was no internet, no phones. Everything that I learned had to be learned through, books in the local library, or going to my local bookshop and seeing what they had.
Yeah.
So I kind of started with what was most accessible in the 90s, which would have been things like, yeah, crystal healing and chakras and that sort of thing. So I definitely think that the yeah, the internet and the availability of information has definitely kind of helped me expand my practice as well. Even things like, being able to find Reiki training and things would
Yeah.
have been so
Oh, yeah.
ridiculously difficult because I don't think they'd have a section for that in the yellow pages
Yeah,
back in the
no,
90s.
definitely
So
not. Yeah.
yeah, no, so I mean, yeah, no, that's been really, really great. And
Yeah.
again, the modern thing is interesting because I mean, if we look at Reiki, for example, so Reiki was discovered in, I think it was like 1929, and
Oh, wow.
yeah, it's actually quite recent in a sense, but back when this was first discovered, as students would spend several hours a week kind of studying and learning, and actually most students didn't get past the second level in their lifetime. Um, and if you just think about how much change we've seen, even in the last 20 years, 30
Yeah,
years, as I kind of said, I grew up without the internet, and now we're, dealing with the challenges of AI and things, which would have just been completely incomprehensible
they
when
would have.
I was younger. That those practices have also had to change in order to stay relevant.
Sorry, was saying hello to people still. But I agree with
Yeah.
you. Having access to all of this information is both a blessing and a curse. It absolutely is. And I think that most of us want to use it to make good change in the world and to make the world a better place. I would hope to think so. And I'm hoping that for AI too, because that's a whole nother can of worms that we definitely need to be careful. How do you get people to trust you when you're doing a healing? Because I know if I was looking for a healer, I would like be nervous about that because I wouldn't want them to be having some secret nefarious motive. You have to like get reviews from other people and make sure that you thoroughly vetted them. Like, how is that experience for you in your work?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because I mean, yeah, there's just so much that could go wrong. I mean, not even just from an energy healing sense, but just kind of generally. So I needed to, as kind of part of writing the book, I needed to get kind of what they call like studio quality photos done, and I needed to get it done quite quickly, and I found someone on the internet, or via the internet, who said that they'd be able to do it. And then they started acting really shady, like they wouldn't give me their address, they just wanted to meet me on some random street, and then they take me back to theirs, and I was like, oh hell no, 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 this is but I
You
mean, so
knew something
even,
was off. Yeah,
yeah, even just kind of in everyday life, we've got to be so careful. But I think especially, the spirituality has unfortunately kind of suffered from a few scandals, and there's definitely been some nefarious behaviors that have kind of taken place over the past you
absolutely.
know decades, to be honest, that it can, and it's especially because I think a lot of people come to spirituality and especially energy healing because they're feeling vulnerable, and they need help, and so they're the perfect people to prey on if you are kind of you've got these nefarious intentions. So I think
Yeah,
unfortunately it is an area that can attract some quite dangerous people, and you do really need to be careful with who you're trusting.
yeah,
um I think for me personally, the community has been a huge part of it. I mean, actually kind of getting actively involved in the community, and speaking with other people and healers and authors and things,
yeah, yeah.
it's that kind of helps build that level of trust, and
Yes,
who you can ask, who can you rely on for recommendations and things like that. So I think if you really are looking for a healer and you're looking for one who is reputable, then definitely kind of ask around in the community, speak to people directly if you can. Just don't just go off of reviews on Google or something, because those can be faked, those can be bought. So yeah, my first bet is always just to speak speak with the local community,
Yes.
do your background research on them anyway, make sure that there's nothing again cropping up on Google that says they've got any sort of background that you might not feel comfortable with.
Yeah.
Always think about your safety first. So if you're going for a in-person session, make sure it's in a kind of publicly registered place, not just some stranger's basement. If in doubt, always feel free. A lot of energy healers do practice long distance, so you don't even need to be present, which is
That's
obviously
true.
a
That's
much
true.
safer option. So
Right.
yeah, for me, yeah.
Yeah. No, and it's great that they found a way, energy healers like yourself, to do these healings through Zoom. Because we know that quantum physics has already proven that you can split an atom and put them millions of miles away from each other. And what will happen to one happens to the other. So we already know there's that ability to have connectedness with beings like we're having a connection right now and ourselves, right? So
Yeah.
there's 2 points I want to cover with you. We'll get to Michael's second, but Hillbilly Herb made a good statement. He said he used to always feel really awkward hovering around the new age section of the bookstore, feeling like some devil worshiper or something was there, like while he was looking at somebody was there eyeing him up. And it's part of the reason why I think a lot of us that are feeling spiritual burnout are staying home more. We're not putting have you noticed that, Jessica? Like we're not putting ourselves out there anymore. There's no more big parties. Remember, like back in the day, everybody had house parties and there was like get togethers at bars, and you just don't see that. What do you think is like accountable? Are we just doing this to ourselves because we're afraid, because of fear, or is it burnout? Like, I don't know.
Oh, again, like these are also really interesting questions with so many different levels. I mean, yeah, I totally get that. I mean, even today, I'll still like, glance over my shoulder when I'm in the bookstore before
Yes,
I, head to the metaphysical section to, make sure one of my colleagues or something isn't right behind me. So, yeah, it is still a thing. I think there's probably quite a few reasons, and yeah, it's definitely declined. There's
yeah,
several festivals and conferences that I go to that I
yeah,
remember in kind of the mid to late 2000s were just these huge affairs, and now you're lucky if there's enough people to fill a small hall. It's
yeah,
yeah, it
yeah,
is quite sad, and I think it's a combination of probably more kind of physical and practical aspects. I mean, everything is so much more expensive now, even just kind of putting on
Concerts are
these
ridiculous.
things.
You can't
It's
afford a concert.
utterly
It's $1,000
no.
for 2 people.
Honestly, that's the thing that kind of saddens me the most.
Yeah,
I love music.
yeah,
Sound healing
yeah.
is one of my favorite forms of energy healing. But yeah, I remember being a teenager, and you'd pay a fiver for a ticket to see a fairly decent band, and that'd be a Friday night out. And yeah, now you're looking at hundreds. But yeah, I think it's everything's got more expensive, which makes it difficult to kind of have those big parties and things, or to afford to go to those big parties. Distance is obviously a big one as well. I think again, pre-internet, the community with the people that you physically had around you. And now kind of in this internet age, a lot of us are building communities online because it allows us to connect more
Yeah,
with like-minded people, which is absolutely fantastic. And to be honest, I'm part of a few online communities and I love them, but it means that you can't do those physical in-person events because you've got someone in the US, someone in the UK, someone perhaps in Ireland, and so you miss that chance to have that in-person physical connection. So I think,
yes,
yeah, there's a few kind of practical elements. I think as well that yeah, I think we are kind of deliberately not going out, and it is for me, I think completely understandable for people who are sensitive to energy, because there's just so much going on out there. It's overwhelming, and it's not just like on a local level, but when you look at the news, and you read the newspapers and things, and there's so much that's polarizing that's happening in the world. And I think unfortunately we've kind of got to that stage now where it's so difficult to talk to someone without politics coming up, without the state of the economy coming up, and issues around immigration and things coming up, that it
Yeah.
definitely can feel kind of safer to just not engage with that, and to stay inside within your own four walls. So I do think, yeah, it's a shame, but I think
It is.
there's
It's
an
sad.
element of the practical, and there is an element that we're doing it to ourselves as well. But
Yes.
that's to protect ourselves rather than we're being antisocial.
Absolutely. You nailed it. That's the reason. I think it's self-preservation.
Yeah.
We live in scary times, and I hope that we can come out of that somehow, some way. Well, we've got another fantastic question. Gee, Michael, you're coming up with these great. I've got a boatload of questions left too, but um, Michael said, "What role do chakras, auras, and meridians play in addressing modern burnout? Is there a particular energy center that tends to hit hardest in today's fast-paced world?" And that's a great question. Like, what do we need to look out for in terms of physicality with burnout? Like, what centers?
So every chakra is kind of associated with different elements or different aspects. It's the same with the meridians as well. I'll stick with the chakras just because I personally kind of work with the chakras. But especially as we kind of mentioned that energetic issues can also impact your physical body, your mental body, your emotional body, etc., and kind of vice versa. That absolutely kind of physical cues and such can be indications that there may be kind of an energetic burnout there as well. So for example, I said earlier that I've been suffering with kind of a weird throat for the past couple of days. And interesting, I did a body scanning exercise on myself and kind of noticed that my throat chakra definitely needs some work. And for me, that's manifesting physically in this like weird kind of, dry throat sort of thing. So
Yeah,
definitely look for, and physical cues are often the easiest ones to note, because we do live in a physical world. I will also preface that by saying that if any of these symptoms kind of linger, or you're worried about them, absolutely see a medical professional, just to
oh,
make sure that
sure.
we're getting that out of the way. But yeah, physical cues are a great way to understand perhaps where there's something in your energy, and that can be the physical location. So as I said, for me, throat chakra. If you're kind of feeling maybe tightness in your chest area, that could be your heart chakra. If you're suffering from headaches, that could be your crown chakra. So
Yeah.
pay attention to where it's physically happening. B,
Mm,
also make sure that you're taking the time to reflect on why you're feeling that way, because with the chakras being kind of related to different aspects, such as creativity and emotions and communications, it's kind of similar to that know your enemy um idea, which is, if you can't identify what the problem is, you're going to struggle to work out how to cure it. So
yeah.
just taking that step back and say, oh God, why do I feel so tired, or why am I feeling a bit funny and a bit out of sorts? Have a think about what's going on. Is it because you haven't been engaging with your hobbies and you're just feeling a bit flat? Is there
Ah,
something that you're worried about? And then kind of using that to narrow down, oh, okay, well, I haven't had a chance to do any painting recently, so I'll work on my sacral chakra. Or maybe I'm just I don't feel like I'm being listened to at work, so again, maybe I need to work on my throat chakra. So yeah, very, very important to be able to have a base understanding as to what the problem is, so you know where to target the cure. But if you are in doubt, then obviously just focus on all of your chakras. There's, especially because the chakras, the meridians, kind of the energy pathways in your body, they're all linked, and actually kind of a blockage in one chakra can prevent the energy from flowing to your other chakras. So if in doubt, or if you do have kind of the time to dedicate to healing all of them, then absolutely go for it. And I will say as well, that do not neglect your hand and your feet chakras.
Ah,
So
yeah.
the hand and the feet chakras, they're known as like secondary chakras, outside of the main seven. But for me personally, and especially as a healer, the hand and the feet chakras are very important. I mean, especially the
Mm.
hands, because that's often where we experience the flow of energy, the energy we take in, the energy that we put out. It always surprises me that, yeah, so few resources about the chakras will kind of speak about the hands, because they're so important. That,
Oh
yeah,
gosh, yeah,
never neglect your hand chakras as well.
exactly. That's a great point, Jessica. Oh my goodness. Um, oh God, we have so many questions coming up. Um, let me see. What did he say here? Jessica is both a Reiki master and a dedicated water witch. Wow, he did a lot of research on
You've
you.
been doing their research, yeah.
People incorporate simple water. Now I like this. This to me is a great question. He wants to know how you can incorporate water-based practices, like you talk about this in your book, of course. Ritual showers, moon water, tea magic. I recently had a guest on where she wrote a book on burn and brew. And so we went through that whole thing. But what do you do ritually during the course of your day? So, like when you take your shower in the morning, I'm assuming, or your bath, do you ritualize that, or do you just go in, do it, and get it over with and move on? Like, what's your day like in terms of ritual?
Yeah, so for me, and I think I tend to ritualize, a lot of things, because it's that intention that is really important. Like, yes, a shower can help, cleanse you, whether you're focusing it on it or not, but it's that intention that really kind of matters. Especially because, and one of the reasons that, again, I kind of love all these things is because it does give you that moment. If you're focusing on your intention, it does give you that moment to check in with yourself, and just put yourself
Yes.
first, put your own kind of health and well-being first. Yeah, but for me personally, kind of the work that I do as a water witch is really quite relevant to the energy healing side of things, because energy, it's all about flow. And one of the reasons that I really like energy healing is because it's not about just kind of, um I suppose, destroying your negativity. And it's not kind of the imagery of someone coming in with a battle axe and swiping out all of your traumas and energetic blockages.
Right,
But
right,
it's
right.
more about kind of breaking them down and integrating them. It's very kind of, it's a flow, it's a movement, it's a process. And that's exactly what the element of water represents. It's movement, it's flow. So for me,
Mhm.
energy healing and kind of the work that I do as a water witch do intertwine quite a bit. But in terms of kind of the daily rituals, I'll wake up in the morning and I start with a tea. Again, that's kind of more from the water side, and I always choose a tea which kind of represents the energy that I need from the day. So, if it's going to be quite a day where I know I need a lot of energy, then I'll start with peppermint. If it's a day where I'm just going to have a relaxing, chilled one, then I'll go for chamomile.
Yeah.
If it's a day where I know I've got loads of meetings and I need to communicate, I'll start with a licorice tea. And again, I always try and drink my tea and just focus on that intention, whatever that intention is, and kind of take that intention into myself as I drink the tea. Often I will focus on just kind of powering up my shield as I'm walking to the gym in the
Mhm.
morning. So I've actually got quite a nice walk. I live next to the River Thames, so it's really nice just being able to walk down to
Sure.
the gym in the mornings along the river, and just connect with the energy of the river, and kind of use that to help build my shield. Because again, water is all about kind of movement, and it's a really nice energy to build a shield with. And then usually kind of as the day goes on, I'll usually be quite busy at work. In the evenings I shower in the evenings, and yep, I turn that into kind of a bit of a ritual. I'm really into soap making, so I tend to make a lot of my own soaps, and
Oh,
so I'll
how
make soaps with
lovely.
specific intentions, adding some herbs and things. And so, yeah, and again, it's just focusing on that intention whilst I'm showering, often cleansing, will be my intention, and just visualizing all the water kind of washing away the negativity.
I
And
do that
then
too. I love that. Love
yeah.
that.
And honestly, in the evenings, it could be anything. I do a bit of water scrying, I do a bit of tarot. I quite like just kind of generally researching things. It may be an energy scan and perhaps doing some chakra meditation, or
Mhm.
again, I quite like playing with essential oils or building crystal grids and things. But I
Yeah.
quite often incorporate seashells rather than crystals. Again, that kind of water witch element. And then usually before I go to bed, as I'm lying in bed, I'll kind of call on Reiki energy and visualize it, just kind of surrounding me again like a shield. But I kind of imagine myself as I'm falling asleep, that energy just kind of staying with me and empowering my chakras as I fall asleep. So
Oh,
yeah,
I
I've
love
got a few. Yeah, it's a really nice way to fall asleep. So I've got a few things that I kind of incorporate into my day. And my advice would definitely be to look for things that you can incorporate into your already existing routine, because
yes.
building new habits can be really, really difficult. And I think one of the
Correct.
reasons that we fail at it is because we try and do something completely new and big, and it's not sustainable. So yeah, if you already have a cup of tea in the mornings, then great, focus on intention whilst you're doing that. Or if you're doing your hair in the mirror in the morning, perhaps that's a great time to say some affirmations or something. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
my piece of advice there. Yeah,
utilize the time that you're already doing these things and turn them.
exactly.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's brilliant. That's brilliant. We have a question from Heidi. She said she often experiences her hands and feet vibrating and they get very warm, hot. Is that an imbalance? What does that mean to you as a healer, Jessica?
Me personally, I wouldn't say that was an imbalance. I'd say that just means you're really sensitive to energy, and actually you should probably focus more on some kind of protection and some cleansing activities. So energy is vibration, and kind of everything vibrates. I mean, for me personally, I feel energy as that kind of vibration. And if let's say a particular chakra is underactive, the vibration of the energy will feel kind of slow and dull. And yeah, if the chakra is overactive, then the energy feels really like fast and buzzy, and yeah,
Yeah.
really quite chaotic. So yeah, for me personally, if hands suddenly feeling very hot, again, that's usually a sign of kind of a big burst of energy, or that you're
Oh, there you
connecting
go.
with a lot of energy.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
Yeah,
for me
she's
personally.
a light worker too. So I would imagine that that would
Oh,
be like something.
definitely, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's nothing she needs to worry about then, right? It's not.
No, but I would just say, yeah, just make sure you're paying attention to your hand chakras, especially just running them under cold water and kind of visualizing the water washing away any negativity. Or if you are kind of shielding, then make sure you really focus on your hands, and kind of
Yeah,
the shield protecting your hand and your feet chakras, because again, that's where the energy flows, that's where we're taking it in and pushing it out. So yeah, it's nothing to worry about.
good,
Just yeah, it means that you're
good.
you're just really sensitive to that
Yeah.
energy, and just maybe need to take a couple more precautions than most people usually would.
Yeah. Or maybe she can use that energy to like heal or maybe if she's got an achy foot or something, she can use that energy on herself.
Definitely.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah, I would think
or
that
give it
would
to
be
a
brilliant.
plant.
There you go.
Plants
Yeah.
love Reiki. Like honestly, I've got so many plants. I'm terrible at keeping plants alive. I've got so many back from the dead with Reiki. It's yeah, even if you've just got a plant nearby, like they love Reiki. So yeah,
Oh,
definitely give them
no.
some of that excess energy.
I have such a great relationship with my plants. I love it. It's funny you're talking about hands and feet, how important they are. And Look at this. Now, Kiara says, my feet often feel like they're vibrating, but in a pattern like a phone. And her son, I guess, experiences that too. What is that vibrating of energy that you feel like in your extremities? Is that just energy dissipating from our bodies? What does that tell you?
So for me, if it feels like it's kind of stuck in your body, I suppose, then
Yeah.
I would probably say that that means either that's an area that you need to focus on healing, because often our energy will tell us, where we need to direct that healing. So, if you get a random pain or something somewhere unexpected, that's usually your energy saying, hey, pay attention to me right over here. Or I'd say that it could be excess energy, so you should focus on grounding.
Oh,
So yeah,
that's
again, the
a good
roots
one.
meditation.
That's a
Yeah.
good one.
So the roots meditation, I know we talked about using it to draw energy up to help build your shield, but you can also use it to send excess energy down into the earth. And you just simply do the root visualization, but focus on excess
Yeah.
energy kind of draining out. And I would say as well that, especially again, because we all experience energy differently, and especially if that kind of pattern is something that you get regularly or semi-regularly, it's just to kind of keep a track of it, like maybe record in a journal exactly what you were doing, how you were feeling, or if there was
Oh,
anything that may particularly stand out, and just see if you can see any patterns, because this could potentially be a sign from your body of something that's about to happen, or something you need to be aware of, or
mm,
yeah, there's quite a few. I'd be quite interested to see if that means anything specific to
yeah.
you.
I like the grounding part for her because I can see where that energy would be like dissipated into the ground as you're doing. That's very excellent. I like that a lot. So we're going to take the last few minutes, Jessica. I want to show folks you have two websites that have been scrolling across the screen. You have and for folks that are listening, mycottagemystic.com and modernenergyhealing.co.uk, right? And I have these links in the description on social media. So folks will be able to find you easily. But I want to just show folks your beautiful websites. Now, what is the focus of your Cottage Mystic one?
So that is more kind of my pagan side of things. So yeah, the first kind of couple of books that I've written have been quite pagan focused, and one on water witchcraft and another one on lithomancy, which is a form of divination
Oh,
using
nice.
stones.
Yeah.
And as I said, I quite like keeping the energy healing and the witchcraft separate. So the Cottage Mystic is I suppose, the pagan focused website, and Energy Healing for Modern Times is the energy healing focused one. But yes, it's still a lot of work to do on both websites. But yes, I do try and keep them updated. I'm also quite active on Instagram. Instagram's kind of the only social media that I use,
You're
really.
using
But
that.
yeah, but honestly, if anybody, I mean, this has been so much fun, and thank you so much for having me. But if
Oh,
anybody has any questions, or just wants to chat, then absolutely find me on Instagram, find me on the websites, because there's contact forms there. Then yeah, please, please, please just give me a shout, because I am always more than happy to talk about these subjects. And as you may have noticed, I can ramble on for hours on these. So yeah,
oh, we
please just
love
give me a
it.
shout.
We love it, Jessica. Now, your courses on that First Cottage website, are they through like video, or are they pre-recorded? How do those courses work?
Yeah, so they're all freely available. It's just YouTube. So depending on the course, it may just kind of be a short course with one or two videos, or it may be a longer course with 4 or 5 videos. Whenever I write my courses, I try and make it a mix of practical information, but or kind of theoretical information, but also practical exercises. So a lot of them will come with meditations and
Oh,
things that you
nice.
can try, or if it's the pagan side, spells and things, that rituals and crystal grids, etc. I do also have the YouTube channel. So twice a month, I release guided meditations on my YouTube channel, just 10-minute guided meditations to kind of help with a variety of different things, whether that's confidence or empowering specific chakras. So yeah, on both of the websites, there'll also be a link to those guided meditations as well.
Now, yeah, I subscribe to that. Now, those courses, do you have price ranges on there? Because I definitely want to start looking at those courses that you got on there. Like
Oh,
when
they're,
you
they're
click
all
on it,
free.
oh, they're all free.
Yeah, everything's free. Yep.
Paying it forward. That's so wonderful. Oh, blessings to you. All right. So here's your other website. Now, this is focused on your, obviously, on your healing energy, and people can schedule with you here. You have meditations. Like, what's the focus of this site?
So this is more just kind of an introduction to energy healing. I do need to build it out. There are some courses that I've been writing that I want to put on this as well, and yeah, kind of more of the scheduling for the Reiki sessions and things. And I also play the sound bowls. So I have my crystal sound bowls. So I'm going to be starting to do kind of live healing sessions as well, which I'll be advertising on the website. But yeah, there's a bit of a blog on there as well. So it's
Wow.
still quite bare bones, but yes, I'm trying to find the time to get it a bit more up and running. But I do unfortunately also work kind of a 9 to 5 corporate, well, not a corporate job. I work for a
Right.
charity.
Right.
But yeah, it's just trying to find the time to do everything, isn't
Lot,
it?
a lot. And that's why I always love to show authors' websites, because so much work goes into them. And like, I'm going to be spending a lot of time on them tonight. I'm going to like take my little iPad into bed, and I'm definitely going to be poking around. Do you have a newsletter or anything that you would like people to sign up to on either website?
Oh, not yet. It's one of the things that's been on my list of things to do for a while, but I just haven't
Mm.
got round to it. But yes, in the future there will be. But for now, yeah,
Nothing yet.
Instagram
And
and the websites are probably the best way, yeah, just to keep up to date.
where can we get your books? On which website? On the energy one?
So that one's published through Llewellyn's, so you can get it through Llewellyn's official site, or yeah, all of kind of the major
Amazon?
um yeah, Amazon, Waterstones. I don't know if you have Waterstones over in the US. But yeah, Barnes and Noble, um yeah, the all of
Typical.
the
Yeah.
yeah.
Highly, highly recommend. I enjoyed your book so much. And
Oh,
again,
thank you.
I highlighted in the, because I get the PDFs because they're so much easier for me and easier for the author too, instead of mailing a book. I love getting the PDF. And I also appreciate how I can highlight key areas in there that I don't want to forget. Maybe I'm journaling. Like, you have charts in here too that are fantastic. You show all the different meridians for energy healing. And I just want to let folks know that if you guys are into energy healing, and even if you're not, this book is fantastic and I highly recommend it. Jessica, thank you so much. I would love to have you come back. Will you come back? There's so much more to talk about.
100%. This has been so much fun. And yeah, thanks for everyone in the comments for your questions and things. And like, yeah, this has been lovely. Thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. There's been comments we didn't even get to from folks, questions, because we're out of time, but we will schedule. I will shoot you an email and get you booked, because we book up really fast. So I want to get you in because I absolutely loved speaking and connecting with you. You're an absolute pleasure and a gem. Thank you, Jessica.
Oh, no, this has been great. Thank you so much. And
We will
yeah,
be in
look forward to
touch.
speaking soon. Yeah.
Thank you so much, and blessings to you, dear friend. Bye-bye. Wow, she was an absolute joy. Wasn't she, guys? Sometimes I just connect with our guests on such a deeper level. And she was absolutely one of them, an absolute joy. And I'm going to bring her back soon because I have so many questions left. And I know you guys did too. So thank you all for joining us today. We love everyone in the chat and appreciate all of you from the depths of my heart. Thank you so much. You've been listening to Ethereal Encounters Unveiled. And of course, a big thanks to United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, which is 105.3 on the Gulf Coast and 107.7 FM in New Orleans. Have a beautiful and blessed weekend, everyone. I do love each and every one of you. Heidi, Hillbilly, everybody in the chat. Love you all. See you next Wednesday. Bye-bye for now.